you.
The one thing that sets us humans apart from AI right now is that we can continuously learn. We might be meat bags that can only master 2 or 3 things after 20,000 hours, but we can continuously learn.
So they are the only frontier multimodal player out there at the moment if OpenAI is dropping this.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to generating videos.
For him, it's just a stepping stone to where the real fun starts, and that is data centers in space, energy production from the sun to power all of it, and then going to the moon, building mass drivers so that he can launch the satellites cheaply and build a Dyson swarm around the Earth to collect energy.
For the first time, everybody that I spoke with at that event and also the presentations was completely focused on Agentic.
I've never felt so empowered in my life. So we need to develop this kind of skill to become better at.
Hello everybody and welcome to a new episode of Singularity Service, where Patrick and Aragorn will talk about what is coming, what it means, and what to do. How's life, Aragorn?
Life is amazing. Life is amazing. Although I really need to get some more exercise because, well, we'll get into that. But I've barely moved from this desk. I'm standing up now, which is good for me, but that I need to get some exercise.
And we had completely different opposite weekends, right? Because I literally have the script with the links and everything on paper printed. Because
in the world, there's trees that need to be cut for that.
No, I had a digital detox weekend. I do this every quarter with the entire family, and the whole idea is we take not only the laptops and the mobile phones, but also the remote control, the PlayStation. Everything digital goes into some big treasure chest. There's a lock on it, and for 2 entire days we're not using anything.
It's crazy. Once a quarter, because I have the feeling that you're doing this all the time.
No, just only.
The way I feel is like every 2 weeks you're like, oh yeah, I have digital detox. And I'm like, man, again?
No, that's just how fast time goes. We do it 4 times a year. No, exactly. And this time I really needed it. In our pod, we talked about the exponential to-do list. That was the last episode, right? Yes. And it really got too busy in my brain. I literally had a fried brain on Friday, and I was happy to kind of step into that. And just 2 days doing basically nothing, doing some cooking, starting to read again. It was a delight, Aragorn. So fresh back at work here.
I am so happy for you. I'm so happy for you.
And you did the exact opposite, right? Burning through more tokens.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy. And I'm totally Claude code. Like I made a channel on my Discord. I have a Discord server, right? And I don't tell everybody about this because I don't want everybody to always know where I am and to see what I'm doing. And I spend my time there. If I want a game, I'm there as well. So everybody can see what I'm doing. And I don't kind of want to have that scrutiny. But I made a special channel on my Discord server where my friends can find me. And it is called CC. Claude code is crack cocaine. And that's because I am 100% addicted to it. There's no doubt about it. And I've even been really thinking about it. What is it that makes it so addictive? And whether it really kind of is the same mechanic that you have behind a slot machine. Every time you give it a prompt, it starts running. You even see it, because Anthropic made it. It says, razzmatazing or combobulating, and you see it running. It's almost like you actually see the slot machine running. And you're like, oh, what's gonna come out next? What's gonna come out? What is it gonna do? Is it gonna be the jackpot? Woo! It's really addictive. But unlike the slot machine, where the house always wins, Claude Code actually does some really good stuff if you know how to properly use it. And I saw some interesting posts online already about that, people making memes about people vibe coding. And then you see, I think it was the Family guy, Peter, is trying to get the window blinds done and he's messing it all up because whatever he tries to fix, he goes 2 steps forwards and 1 step back. But I think there's really different levels to it. And I've been incredibly productive.
So that slot machine analogy, I like it a lot because sometimes you are in a conversation and you ask something and you expect a result. You expect it to be like an 8 and then you get something back, and then there's something surprising in that. It's a 9 or a 10, something you couldn't even think of, or the look is even better, or the outcome is better, the answer is wonderful. That is that slot machine kind of effect, right? So you're expecting something unexpected, more intelligent output than the intelligence that you put in there. I like that analogy.
I've been building a lot of stuff the last month, and I made a whole blueprint of it. And I posted this on LinkedIn, and people didn't initially understand what it was. So actually, I made another version of it that people can understand. I had Claude Code whip up a website called cute-brain.itsmrmetaverse.com, and it's a super cute website with toddler style graphics, cartoons explaining my whole artificial intelligence Claude Code setup. So it's a kind of a joke. So this is but all jokes aside, I made a blueprint. So basically, I have a setup now where my Claude Code acts as a CEO, and he can hire different department heads to do stuff. He even has a recruiter, Maven, who can specialize special profiles and hire those people. And that's how I get to work. So at one point this weekend or last week, I had over 80 AI agents working at the same time on something. And as you can see here, there's quite a lot of information here, but I built a voice interface so it can talk back to me and tell me what it did. I have a whole plugin ecosystem with all kinds of different skills and plugins that I use for writing code. I have a automation system. I have a system where all my 3 machines, because I have a laptop, a desktop, and a Mac Mini, can exchange information between them. And I've now also, for example, installed large language models, Gemma models on all 3 machines for different purposes that I'm running locally to save tokens. So I could talk about this for hours. I keep all my information in my Obsidian Vault. It's all markdown files. I could talk about this for hours, but basically that's the gist of it. And the things that I do with that, for example, is I built this website for my Shenzhen trip to China, because I'm going to make a video series with DPK and BusinessWise. For that, I'm going to Shenzhen in 2 weeks. So I had Claude Code write me a whole website with 2 things: the trip itinerary, what we're going to be doing, but I also had it make a list of locations for us to go to do shots for the video series, right? So this is all automated. This was literally like 20 minutes work.
How autonomous was this one setup? So if you, did you then one prompt say, I go to Shenzhen, this is the dates, and give me this?
I literally, no, it's even better, Patrick. I told it to, I said, I'm going to Shenzhen in 2 weeks. Go to my email inbox, read the emails by NL Robotics and DPK Media on the trip and everything that's in there. Look at my Fireflies notes from the calls that I had for the preparation of the video series, because we need the shot locations to record cool stuff on robotics for our video series. Make me the website. That was it.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I have a similar kind of approach that I used for a workshop that I have tomorrow for a company called Hero. They are in food production, and I do a big workshop for different groups, and we give some homework to people about process that they want to improve. So my inbox kind of was overflowing with people coming back for, I like to do this and that, and it was really all over the place. Normally, it would take me a couple of days to kind of get it all together, think of what we should do, we should not do. I just asked Claude, read through all the emails, give him one overview, and he spit out one PowerPoint and then some. That magical component also came out of it. Maybe you should start with this process and leave that process. All the thinker was already there. Oh, that's interesting. And there you go.
Now, there's you went to an event this weekend to shimmy into that. Of course, everybody has seen that, or everybody's seen, maybe you know, but SaaS companies have been taking quite a big hit. And part of the reason that their stock has been going down is because of the anticipation of AI. And a big part of that is the rise of OpenClaw, Agentic AI. And we'll get into that. But another thing that I built literally over the weekend, right? Literally over the weekend, it just took me maybe it took me 20 minutes of my own time. I had Claude Code do everything. I built a proposal portal, right? And we already checked it this morning. It's not fully done yet, but this is also, I just said, I want a way to generate beautiful client proposals very quickly. And so you can start a new proposal. This morning we made a proposal, and basically it's just a wizard. So you could fill in everything by hand, which of course we're not going to do because I built in an AI assistant. And you can tell the AI assistant in a normal conversation everything that you want. It gives you here all the things that it needs to fill in the wizard. And then at the end, you click generate proposal, and then it generates a proposal. Now, this is not perfect, but basically it gives you a website like this. and everything's in there. And all the packages, this is not finished yet, but there's going to be the package, pricing, everything is going to be included. And another thing that I'm working on is that it will always automatically add a market intelligence report, the likes of which you used to pay 10,000 euros for to a McKinsey analyst, and you're just going to get that for free with our proposal. And this is the kind of thing that you can now do from your home. You don't need to know any coding. You just need to have good common sense, the ability to think logically and think about what should be involved, and have a good conversation with Claude Code about what your end goal is, and then work on it together.
And that's also the addictive part, right? Getting back to that, because even months ago, let's say 6 months ago, there were a couple of ideas that I have in my mind as I'm working, and you just kind of, these ideas pop up in your head and they flow away because you cannot really execute, or it costs a lot of money. Your brain intuitively says, well, I cannot do that. I don't have the money for that or the budget. But now more and more, every idea that pops in your mind, you go like, oh, I can do that. I want a website for A, I want a brochure for B, I want a poster for C, and you just have multiple agents immediately executing that task for you. And that's also what leads a little bit to that brain fright that I had last week. So many ideas, and also the desire to kind of execute them all is kind of where I'm trying to rewire my brain as much as I can.
Yeah, I think that you're really touching on something important, because I do notice the same thing. Like, honestly, people say that AI is making us dumber, right? This is part of the conversation. But every single day, I get up, I'm super excited to start work on all the projects that I have and the things that I envision that I can now finally build. I've never felt so empowered in my life. Yet at the end of the day, at around 6 o'clock, my brain is completely empty. It's fried. It's like you described, it's gone. Now, you can interpret that in many ways, but I would argue that if your brain is fried, you've been using it. So the thing here is, and this is what I've been thinking about now, is that although it's the same thing with the calculator. Yes, people today are a lot worse at doing calculations in their head, for example, than we were 20 years ago. But we use our brains differently. There's some scientific research that concluded that 500 years ago, the ability of the average human to have abstract thought, right, was very low compared to today. So it was really hard for people to understand any kind of abstract concept, because the world didn't kind of incorporate that, and they didn't need that kind of brain capacity. And I think we touched on this last podcast as well. So rather than making us dumber, I think that the metrics by which we develop our brain, or with which we can measure our capabilities, have to change, because we will be using our brains differently. I am thinking about different things. Doesn't mean I'm thinking less deeply, or that the problems that I'm trying to solve working with Claude are less important. It's just something that it's not the same way we used to do it, right? And I think that there's a transition phase there, and that will require something of us. I also think that, of course, now you and me are totally excited and we want to build everything. So we need to develop this kind of skill to become better at prioritizing and understanding what we should be doing, what we shouldn't be doing. And this all ties back to what we've been saying, right? We are now in a paradigm where you need to develop a new skill set.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. And the fact that you conclude that you use your brain so much that at the end of the day, you're a little bit feel like it's fried. But the thing that I want to get under control more is, even when I'm fried, I still want to do more, rather than going outside and having a good conversation. And I see myself sitting behind my laptop, and it just doesn't go that fast anymore. My prompts are not sharp, the interaction is not sharp, my conclusions are not sharp. That's the addictive part that I want to get better under control, make the right decisions and go high speed, and then also take the breaks.
There's this joke about George Jetson, right? If you ever watch the Jetsons, that his job is basically just pressing the button, and he complains about a sore finger when he gets home. And the funny thing is that what I never expected when I watched that as a kid was how addictive it would be to be pressing that button. Hey everybody, it's Aragorn here. Now, you may or may not know this, but me and Patrick Willer, we have been for over a year now collecting the most important signals through the noise, meta trends, and other insights from artificial intelligence and broader innovation trends in technology and science. And we always put them together every week in a newsletter, which we release on our Substack called Innovation Network Substack. Now, every other week, we release this amazing podcast called Singularity Servers, where you can listen to us live discussing everything that's been happening, what is coming, what it means, and what to do. And we love doing that, but what we would love even more than doing it would be if there's more people that could appreciate and enjoy what we're trying to do. So if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to the newsletter on innovationnetwork.substack.com. And of course, tell your friends and family about it, because we'd love to make sure that they're also in the know on how our world is changing at an exponential pace and what they can do to benefit and thrive in these extraordinary times. That's it for now. Back to the show. All right.
Yeah.
Your event.
I went to Salesforce event. And of course, I've worked 8 years for Salesforce, and Salesforce is a big client of us. We do executive dinners for them. Always fun to see how this company is progressing and how they are staying agile with 80,000 employees or 70,000 at the moment in this whole pressure thing that is around the software as a service companies, right? The stock is going down. They have a culture that is quite heavy on a lot of people on service, a lot of people on sales, and even selling that as a product. And now they have to move to more the AI agentic period. For the first time, everybody that I spoke with at that event and also the presentations was completely focused on agentic, called Agentforce. But still, most of the people that I spoke with on the floor, everybody is experimenting in small teams still, and the adoption is still pretty far away from really using the agents like we do. But that makes sense, right? Because the way that we go wouldn't fit a large company that also has to look at the security of all the documentation, all these kind of things. They just cannot have that speed that we have in a small company. But the pivot and the enthusiasm of all the people in the space willing to experiment with agents is quite large.
Yeah, but you made a very interesting comment there. I think that's so relevant. You said for these big companies, it's much harder to make that pivot because of all the risks involved, all the aspects that come to it. But I think that's also exactly where the danger, and I don't like to use that word, but it's appropriate here. The danger comes from what we're now entering into. There's a reason that these SaaS companies are seeing their stock go down and the market sentiment changing, because I said this in the last episode as well. A lot of these companies, even if it's not actually the absolute reality today because of the complexity of their stack, we're very, very rapidly moving towards a situation where they will no longer be competing with a company with 20,000 employees, right? I think it was this weekend that we actually saw. Yeah, it was this weekend. Oh, you missed that. The first single person company valuated at over $1 billion. Was announced. It was a Forbes article. Let me see if
I believe I saw that on Friday. 2 guys doing a pharmaceutical kind of thing, 2 brothers or something like that.
Yeah. Basically, there's a 1 or 2 man company now that's valuated at 1.8 billion. They've been shipping GLP-1, so that's basically Ozempic and such products. So it's probably US where it's easier to get this. Here you can only get it with a prescription from the doctor, etc. But still, all of it is AI. The whole thing is AI. And of course, some industries and some kind of companies will lend themselves more easily to this, but the reality here remains the same. We're seeing an age in which 1 or 2 people with like 100 AI agents, like I've had working for me this week, can basically do the same work as 1,000 humans. And that creates completely new dangers and competitive advantages for smaller companies compared to large companies, while they have the same capacity to produce a very complex product and ship it to millions of people.
Yeah, and today we have on the list also to talk a little bit about Suno. It's the same story, right? A very small team with a very big revenue per employee. But let's park that for a little bit later. And we see that across the board, yeah. But this was a prediction from Sam Altman. Soon we will have a 1 billion company with 1 person. Now we have
exactly.
Early in 2026. Yeah,
Sam Altman predicted it. Exactly, Sam Altman predicted it. Basically, everybody that's in the AI space at the forefront has been predicting things like this to happen, and many people were very skeptical. But yes, here we are. And it's interesting.
How crazy did that sound? Right? He said something like that like 2.5 years ago. Now it doesn't sound crazy at all. But 2.5 years ago, that sounded completely crazy. Are you crazy?
Yeah, I wanted to show this map because this was released. This is AI adoption worldwide. And what you see is that actually we're living in a country where adoption apparently is very high. What we're looking at is a map of the world released by Andreessen Horowitz, and it's from SimilarWeb. It shows the world. And what you see is that Western Europe, the Netherlands, is all very dark reddish. Canada as well, Australia, some of the South American countries at the top, like Colombia, and actually Saudi Arabia. So these are countries where AI adoption is quite high. But what is AI adoption then? Because that's the reason I'm showing this. Because if you'd ask you or me, Patrick, or anybody in our network, we'd be like, what do these people mean? Like when I go out in the street, 90% of people we're in the top 1% of adopters. Right? If I talk to my neighbors, nobody will know what Claude Code is. And if they even heard of it, they won't understand what it represents. And that's just the crazy thing of all of this when you think about it. You just went to a massive event for Salesforce where they're really now making this pivot because they see this is the future. Yet the realization that the vast majority of the world, even in the countries that are the top adopters, still has absolutely no idea what's coming for them is crazy.
There's an interesting thing on that map, by the way, that you're talking about. So the very smaller countries, for instance, like Singapore, Hong Kong, United Arab Emirates, those are the highest scores, but those are the countries that also have, for instance, a license for the entire country to have access to OpenAI. So that's why they score so high. But there are, of course, regions that are hyper into AI.
Yep. China is gray, which means that there's no dependable data on it.
Okay, cool. Let's move to the topic, and that's a topic that actually already happened 2 or 3 weeks ago, but it was very relevant to discuss it because it was dropped off the last conversation that we had. Elon Musk announced a new plan. He's going to build a new TeraFab, a 20 billion chip plant into Austin, Texas, and the name TeraFab comes from the goal of producing 1 terawatt, which is 1 trillion watts of AI compute. To give you an idea how much it is, that is 50 times more than that we currently have across the world. That's what he wants to build in a fab.
So what I was showing while you were talking about TeraFab, because TeraFab, it's very important because what Elon Musk basically said is, I'm going to vertically integrate production of chips completely myself. And we discussed this prior to the episode, and that's why even you decided eventually to put it at the top of the list to discuss, even though it was all the way at the bottom first. When we look at NVIDIA, which is, still going for the most valuable company in the world and then changing places again, but it's really high up there. NVIDIA is sold out, right, for the next 2 years straight, I think. And NVIDIA is going to be $1 trillion company. They're going to do $1 trillion of revenue is the expectation in 2026. And they're making a margin of 80%, which is absolutely ridiculous, but they can because...
absolutely ridiculous, 80%. If that's so, that's amazing.
Yeah. It's absolutely crazy, but that's the situation because they can get away with it. The thing here to realize is that
for reducing prices to the benefit of everybody.
Yeah, well, now the thing here is that, of course, apart from the Iran war and its potential impact on chip production, which I've written 3 articles on now so far on Substack. So if you're following the Innovation Network Substack, which you should, then maybe consider also following my Substack. It's mrmetaverse.substack.com, and read those articles on the Iran war and the geopolitical situation and the probable or possible consequences of that for chip production and the AI race. But leaving that aside, the only reason NVIDIA cannot make more money is because TSMC cannot produce more chips for them. Chip demand is going through the roof, and it's just going to continue. And the same is for memory. So, but coming back to the TeraFab, so this is the thing. NVIDIA is completely bottlenecked, not by demand, but by TSMC production. And this is where Elon Musk really has gotten annoyed, because Elon Musk already made a deal with Samsung. He is bought up basically every Samsung chip that's going to be produced over the next 18 months, I think, apart from the ones that Samsung isn't selling, obviously, for its own phones, etc. And then he said, but that's not enough. I'm going to produce my own chips, which is really crazy. And so the TeraFab, he's going to build a whole factory, which will have the whole production set there. He will be making the chip wafers, he will have the lithography, and he will be producing the chips. And that's right next to the Optimus facility in Texas, Austin as well, where he will be building robots. But the really crazy part is not the TeraFab, because the TeraFab for him is just, even though it's already a massive production capability, for him it's just a stepping stone to where the real fun starts, and that is data centers in space, energy production from the sun to power all of it, and then going to the moon, building, and that's what the video was showing at the start, building mass drivers on the moon so that he can launch the satellites cheaply and build a Dyson swarm around the Earth to collect energy and to do the data center work. And you might think, wow, that's insane. That's insane. But the truth is that all over the world, also in the Netherlands, right, you see NIMBY come up. Not in my backyard. Not in my backyard. Literally, yes, NIMBYs. NIMBYs is the new Karens, the NIMBYs. So literally...
And we need to move to YIMBYs. That's what we need, more YIMBYs.
Exactly. I mean, apart from the fact that modern data centers, and this is also something I really want to stress, people complain about energy and water for data centers, but the truth is that new data centers, not the old ones, right? But the new ones, they only need water once because they have a circulatory system that keeps recycling the water, right? So they don't use a lot of water anymore. So what people should really want is to build new data centers to replace the old ones, because then water usage will go down massively. That's one. Two, the economic value of having a data center in your backyard is gigantic. And in a world where jobs will go down, you want to have a way where economic value is in your neighborhood. So that's another thing. But even here at Schiphol, they wanted to do more data centers at Aalsmeerdijk, I think it's called. And the locals are complaining, oh, this is bad. We don't want this in our backyard, because people don't understand what's happening. But that means that in the future, we're going to go to space, because nobody can tell you that you can't build there. Energy is abundant. You don't need to depend on an electricity grid. And the only person that is positioned to do this, who has his own space company, launching hundreds of rockets a year, going up to thousands of rockets a year, is, yes, hello, Mr. Elon Musk.
Yeah, so very interesting space to watch. If Colossus was any indication of how fast Elon Musk can build something like that, let's see when it's finished and operational.
It depends on when Optimus will go live, because I think that he still claims...
This year, Optimus 3 will hit the market, about 5,000 production. It's not that big yet, but and Optimus 4 is planned for next year, and a new number every year, continuous.
I'm very curious, because he said in his last podcast appearance for the Abundance Summit, he said Optimus is the most advanced humanoid robot in existence, and he has not seen a single other company come close, which is quite a statement, because I had considered Figure 3, and we've featured a Figure many times in this podcast. I would say Figure is the most advanced one by Brad Adcock, and I've seen videos of Figure, and I've seen it perform, and I've seen it explained how it's completely working with a neural network, and it is a spatial awareness. I've not seen a single one of those videos of Optimus. I think some skepticism there is in place. On the other hand, even though Elon Musk is sometimes wrong at the time, directionally he has always been correct. And when people say, yeah, but he didn't build the boring company, then I think, come on, man, how many companies can one man lead? Can we be a little realistic?
A lot,
here?
as it turns out.
Yeah, but it's like people say, yeah, Elon Musk is a fraud because he promised us the Hyperloop and the Boring Company and he didn't do them. And I'm like, hello, so just because he did these two things he didn't do, everything else doesn't count? How does that work? But anyway, go on.
Now let's pivot to some other news. In the past weeks, we had the announcement that OpenAI is closing down Sora. What they launched a little over 8 or 9 months ago was a social media platform where everybody with their own avatar could instantly create deepfakes. It was the first social media platform with only AI content. We have, of course, the Sora 1 and the Sora 2 video generator. Here in Europe, we never enjoyed that social media platform. We did have step-by-step crappy access Sora. After some months, we finally had it. Never really took off like Nano Banana took off. I'm not surprised that it is closing down, but there is more to this story, right? It's not just it didn't work, we're closing it down. There's more strategy behind it. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit on it.
Yeah, there's a lot of aspects to this to consider, right? I think that you got to keep in mind that originally OpenAI's first model that they went public with was, what was it called? DALL-E, that's it. DALL-E came even before ChatGPT. And it was a pretty big hit at the time. Now, if you look back at it, you're like, man, what a piece of shit. Back then, this was state-of-the-art technology only 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. And they always kind of tried to maintain that track of building models also for image and video. But apart from the hype, whenever they released some incredibly impressive videos, they never really got around to making a real consumer-ready product out of any of these. I mean, Sora was released, the videos were super impressive, everybody was super hyped, but then nobody ever got, even in the US, where they did have access, the access was horrible because it was expensive to use Sora. The queues were massive. Apparently, they didn't have the infrastructure to back it up because they were all focused on ChatGPT. So from that point of view, I think that for OpenAI, it makes a lot of sense to become a little bit more focused, right? And it now seems, you very adequately remarked on this in the prep for the show. You said it seems like they're going now down the same route as Anthropic. So the idea that,
because you can see that for all angles, right? Yeah, absolutely. Anthropic is really gaining so much market share in the enterprise market now, and OpenAI is really missing that boat, and they are course correcting that. And also on the agentic side. Yeah,
exactly. I think that on the one hand, they realize that they got to make a choice here. What do they want to be? Do they want to be a purely B2C company, which is in line with Sora and other models being part of their portfolio? Or do they want to be a B2B company first? And I think that Sam Altman realized, one, that the real money initially in the short run specifically is there, and he needs it because, right, he's burning through cash. They're burning through cash. So ultimately, if they want to be the leaders, if they want to build the best model, if they want to get to super intelligence, cash is king for them. And that means that the consumer market is simply not as important as getting to the B2B market. And I think that that is a big part of this decision. The other part of it is probably that I think they probably realized at OpenAI that Amodei and Anthropic got it right. That focusing on building the best coding AI that can basically write code, so basically really understand the language of our civilization at this point, of our technology, is the best and fastest way to recursive self-improvement for artificial intelligence, which is absolutely mandatory if you want to build a super intelligence. Because the one thing that sets us humans apart from AI right now is that we can continuously learn. We might be meat bags that can only master 2 or 3 things after 20,000 hours, but we can continuously learn. And as a general purpose organic machine, that makes us the most advanced piece of technology on the earth. And so if that is the future for AI, then that is something it absolutely needs. And going down the coding route is probably the best way to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've also looked back to all the keynotes, workshops, and conversations that we did in the past years. Every time you take something like Sora as something flashy that you show to executives, and they are always impressed by, oh, interesting, you can make any video of it, and that's interesting. But usually it's not their core business, right? Some marketing folks are interested in that, but the fact that you are stellar in coding and creating any application, that really has value. So it is all the text generation, all the code generation, those are more important. Same thing with the world generation, right? That's something that we, especially as Mr. Metaverse, care so much about. But when I show that to executives, they always go like, I said I can do a complete 3D world, but not there yet, right? These are things that are not catching on the average executive at the moment.
And of course it makes sense because, and I think that what probably really drove this message home also for Altman and OpenAI is the rise of OpenClaw, of course, right? OpenClaw changed the game, for all its downsides and its security risks, and the fact that you and me are both waiting for this to go horribly wrong at some point. It gave a very, very interesting insight, and it was a moment of an aha moment for the whole industry and everybody of, okay, this is what AI needs to be because that's what everybody wants, but that's also where the greatest value is. If I showed a little bit of what I've been doing with Claude Code, and this is not fully OpenClaw, but having an AI that can code and can actually do work for you and that understands that and can even build its own hands and feet, right? Because that's how you could look at it.
It's a von Neumann machine in your laptop.
Exactly. It's a digital von Neumann machine. That's a wonderful analogy there, because this can now build its own hand and feet. When I tell Claude Code, I want this, it itself cannot maybe do that, but then it can build the software that ties into it as a skill or a plugin to then be able to do that for you or to allow you to do that. And that basically makes it 100 times more powerful than just being a chatbot. And that's also what most people don't realize.
Yeah, and via that route, maybe you will end up with something that is very strong in video or something else over time. That's also a possibility.
And you can attest to this, me as well. I can feel it in my setup that it's growing more powerful and smarter.
Well, absolutely, yeah.
But I also tied Google into it because for image creation, image analysis and such things, the Google model, the Gemini models, and Nano Banana are now the best, basically, and the cheapest. And This is interesting because, and interesting because now OpenAI said we're not going to continue down the visual modality path as a focus like that. That means that now suddenly Google is the only big frontline corporation that is working in this space, and its competitors are all small incumbents.
Yeah, that's a very important remark that you make there. So they are the only frontier multimodal player out there at the moment if OpenAI is dropping this.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to generating videos. I think Claude is very good at interpreting images. They can do visual reasoning, but they cannot output it like Google can.
Yeah, and it's expensive, because if you do visual reasoning and interpretation with Claude, it is like, easily 4 or 5 times more expensive than doing it with a Gemma model.
Exactly.
And we'll cover this later on as well. But I think that positions Google extremely well to be dominating, for example, AI on smartphones, etc., or at least Android phones and small edge devices, of course, combined with their new Turbo Quant technology and their 4-bit models, but we'll cover that later.
Yeah, well, we dive into the Gemma release right now. Google has released Gemma 4. Some things to note about it, that is a very small model specifically geared towards running on your phone or on a Mac Mini, etc. And it's also open sourced via the Apache 2.0 license, so everybody can basically use it, can look at the source code. So this is another step into putting smarter models on a local machine and use them for whatever you want to create, basically.
Yeah, so...
Did you not download this over the weekend already?
I did. I have it running. I have Gemma models running. So I have my Mac Mini there is running a Gemma model. Sorry, E4B, I think it is, which is rather small. It's kind of the equivalent of a Haiku model. So it's not super impressive for current frontier models, but it's running locally. Right? It's completely locally here and it's really fast for easy tasks. I'm using it. I have the same model running on the laptop, and then on my desktop, I have the best Gemma model running, which is 31B. And the way these models, and this is probably good for our listeners to understand, is that basically a model needs a certain amount of space, because the models basically live in your memory. This is why the prices for RAM and VRAM have skyrocketed, because to run models, they need to live inside of the memory of the computer. They cannot just sit on your hard drive, because then they cannot process the information. So that's why demand for RAM has gone up massively in the world, and that's why that will continue to be like that for a while. But that also means that there's now this kind of commercial, let's say, pressure to come up with ways to reduce the size of these models. Because the only reason you can use ChatGPT or Claude from your home is because there's a data center out there where this massive model is running on 3 different machines, right? Because they can't even run on a single machine, and then you'd access it like that, because otherwise it would be impossible. So, and this is where innovation obviously always comes from. It comes from the pressures that are created.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so what Google is doing, which is super cool, they just released a paper called Turbo Quant. And what they're basically doing is they're traditionally, and don't think about this too deeply, but traditionally a lot of software was built in 16 bits or 8 bits, and bigger bits was usually better for all kinds of reasons. But the problem is that requires a lot more memory. That's all you need to know. And so now, because of this pressure, this kind of economic pressure as well, this scarcity pressure, they're trying to find ways to do the same quality output with a smaller number. So these models, the Gemma models, are 4-bit, and Turbo Quant, which is something the paper from Google was focused on, is about 3 to 3.5 bits. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot smaller than 4 bits, but you have to keep in mind that this still means an actual reduction of like 2x, so half the memory needed. And this means that you can build models that are...
You don't lose half the intelligence. It's a little bit less intelligent, but it's still quite intelligent. That's the thing.
Yeah, it's actually almost like magic, because what they're proving is that they can reduce the size and the complexity and the efficiency of these models by orders of magnitude, while maintaining, 90 to 95% of its capabilities. Right? And this is, of course, also in line with what we know from the human brain, because the human brain uses way less energy.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where,
exactly.
That's where we need to go, right?
That's where we need to go.
That amount of intelligence for that amount of energy.
Exactly. So this is a wonderful new path that is extending against the exponential improvement of AI, because maybe the models right now are not getting exponentially faster and smarter in compared to the last model. It's not like twice as smart, but what we are seeing is that these, in all other dimensions, these models are now catching up. And that means that in a very short amount of time, we will have models that are just as intelligent as, for example, Claude Opus 4.6 or Gemini 3.1 Pro, but that can be run completely local on your smartphone, and you won't even need the internet anymore. And the implications of that are massive. They are massive, right? Because then you can put super intelligence or superhuman intelligence basically anywhere. You can in just a small chip, you can run it in any device anywhere.
You don't need any cloud anymore. You can just locally have that and configure it ultimately completely to your personal needs with your personal memory. And it literally is that personal assistant that we all have been craving for. This is the step towards Jarvis for everybody to have it on their phone. And everybody has a phone. So within 1-2 years, this is for everybody at their fingertips. They can use it.
Yeah, and that's good for energy usage, because that means that we'll have these intelligences at a very low energy usage. Of course, we will not start using less energy as humanity. This is the illusion that people have and why they protest against AI. Our energy usage is always going to go up, right?
Yeah, it's not going down because we'll do way more with it and we have new ideas and we'll use more energy. Exactly. But we'll have better things coming out of that as well.
As long as there are humans and we're building a civilization, our energy requirements will keep going off. That's what the Kardashev scale is about. There's a reason that the Kardashev scale, which is our way of categorizing the level of a civilization, is 99% based on its energy usage.
And we are on level 0, right?
We're at level 0. We are at level 0. Yes, exactly. Like Elon Musk put it, if we would harness 1/1,000,000th of the energy coming from the sun, it would still be 1,000,000 times more than the total amount of energy that we're using today on Earth. And imagine what we could do with a civilization where we had 1,000,000 times more energy than we have today. And that's why we're going to space, to tie it back to TeraFab and the moon facilities that we're looking at now.
Okay, let's pivot to Meta. We have not talked about Meta for quite some time, but they have a new model. They have created an AI model of the human brain. They call it Tribe V2. And it's kind of it's the best way to describe as a digital twin of your neural activity. So if you would look at a video or see something, then your brain kind of changes a little bit. It's actually the bloodstreams that they are measuring, so they can kind of predict how you react to a certain video or a certain color or a certain object, etc. And it goes a little bit, it is not, but goes in the direction of reading your brain, right? And this is important because we'll move also quite quickly to brain-computer interfaces. The Neuralinks, which is now for 10 people have a Neuralink or something like that. But this will scale up also exponentially in the coming years. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I actually have something to show. So for those of you watching, and you can see the image, for those of you listening, this is a machine that shows a woman sitting up in a very large kind of pod-like seat. And there's a big halo thing, like a big MRI scanner just for the head around her skull, around her head. And this is a machine built by Meta that can read people's thoughts. And this is already 2 years old now, or at least they've been working on it for years. And it's quite interesting to know because this is related, because the Tribe model is basically a model that predicts your brain's responses to video, audio, and language. And the idea of that is that it's kind of a simulated MRI scan of your brain based on a limited amount of signals. And the reason that Meta is building this is because they patented, just like Apple did, by the way, 2 years ago already, the technology to build AirPods that you use with your phone that can interpret your brain signals to send commands to your phone. And this all ties back to that because Meta has a massive research going on that is using AI to basically learn how to read people's minds. Now, this machine is not something you can take with you. It would be way too complex. But this machine that I just showed is actually capable of literally seeing what you are thinking of. Right? So it uses AI to interpret signals from your brain. And if you're thinking of a horse in a blue meadow with a red tree, then it will actually know that you're thinking of that and create that image based on your thoughts. So Meta is, and just to be clear on this, I know that a lot of people will think this is super scary, but Meta is far from the only company. Apple is also working on this kind of stuff. But a lot of companies...
Snap also acquired a big player in this space. I once tried that device, and then you really had to think of certain shapes, a triangle or a circle, and then something happens on the screen. It's magical if you really feel that.
Yeah, and in my keynote, I had a part which I haven't had in there for a year now, but initially when I was still also talking about the metaverse, there is already a gamer girl streamer who plays games only with her mind. So she basically has a device that she puts on that measures her brain activity, and then she learned how to play games. Of course, this is not just, it's not just Jedi tricks, and you think it's not so easy. She has to learn to think very specific things like roll left, and then her character rolls left, and so there's also some mental discipline involved there. I guess it's also for Jedi like that. But the point is that this technology is really moving forward quite fast, and of course we saw with Meta, with the glasses that we used to have, that they developed this strip around your wrist, and this is also, of course, the same kind of technology. It reads signals from inside of your body, interprets them, and then changes them into commands or etc. And a lot of companies, and Meta is definitely on the forefront of this, are working on this because this is the next kind of foundational technology for how we interface with technology, right?
And it is. Just imagine. So we talked at the beginning of the conversation about a fried brain, right? And that's in a situation where we just type and move to voice commands to Claude, do this, do that. But the moment you can literally have your idea directly communicated with Claude, man, that's going to be something else. That is 10xing that speed or even further, right? Let alone the conversations that we can have with each other in that kind of thing. It's that will. We've seen nothing yet. This wave that we're currently in with AI is nothing compared to what will then happen with humans, how humans behave, how businesses will be built. Yeah. Talking about building businesses, this is a tool that is very important, right? You can put somebody in a virtual space, in a store, for instance, and see how a person would react to certain shelf space or whatever, and have that all simulated, like a flight simulator, basically, how you train a pilot. You can now put a consumer in there and train it with any product. That is the future of how you do A/B testing on consumers.
Yeah, and the thing with a smartphone is that it's a wonderful device, but it's very limited in basically the raw, bits per second that it can push through from the human to the machine, right? Because we are staring at a screen and we need to use our thumbs to type stuff. And basically we have very low bandwidth in the amount of information exchange that we can do per second. And this is really limiting us. And all of these attempts, just like Elon Musk's Neuralink company, right, which basically builds a chip straight onto your brain, the whole idea is to significantly improve the bandwidth that we can have between the brain-computer interfaces, be them invasive or not invasive, to allow us to have a far faster interaction with our digital counterparts, with our AI, so that we can fully integrate them in our workflows, in our thinking.
Yeah, and while the world and legislation is thinking about guardrailing AI content, this is coming in pretty soon as well. How to guardrail your neuro rights and how to deal with that. It will be a completely different ballgame, right?
It's
Good luck with that.
Going to be very important. And I think once again here, so Apple is working on a series, Neuromancer, which is the adoption of the William Gibson novel Neuromancer, which is the seminal cyberpunk science fiction novel that everybody should read if you want to better understand the future of the metaverse, AI, and some parts of our own reality. Of course, it's not 100% match. Yeah, go and watch Neuromancer when it comes out. I would argue, I think Apple TV does a great job always with these series, so I have full confidence it will be very good. And go and read Accelerando. Of course, I've mentioned that many times before.
So let's pivot to the next topic. This is something that is, if I see something like that, I'm always so interested, because as a music lover and DJ, I always follow all the AI music generation news. And now there was an article about Suno. We've talked about Suno many times. It's an application where you can create your own songs as a studio. You can really go deep if you're a producer. But they have reported some annual revenue numbers. Just a couple of months ago, they had 200 million annual recurring revenue. And now they have 300 million annual recurring revenue for 2 million paid subscribers. And here comes the catch. They are generating 7 million songs a day. In my opening of the keynote, which is the same opening as my book, I have a prelude in my book where I write about the fact that the first sound waves were captured 150 years ago. That was the first time we were capable of capturing a sound wave. And then the amount of sound carriers that we, or tracks, if you will, that somebody has in a collection and can produce, I thought with Spotify, that would reach the maximum, right? That's the absolute maximum. And now 7 million songs are being generated every single day. That's more than the entire music catalog in the 90s, right? That's just crazy.
Yeah, it's still, I really loved that part of your book because it was a completely different approach to looking at exponential changes and trends. You also made this, you also talk about these different ways of how ideas spread, and that tied into it very nicely. But I really love that because you made this comparison. You said, well, we thought that first we moved to records and then we can freely distribute music, and then we moved to CDs. And then when we moved to streaming, we thought, oh man, all music is now basically democratized.
We're done.
We all have access to everything all the time. We're done. And then, no, we can still break down music to first principles. And now instead of having songs and albums from artists, we can basically generate our own custom music all the time. And we're going to take it one step further. And that's literally what's happening. And I think it was last week I had this interesting conversation. I think, like I said before, I think we're going to a second renaissance. I think that human created art, and music is part of that, will be exponentially more valuable. And I also think that live music, which is funny because 500 years ago, live music was the only kind of music you could get. And to get it was a real treat. People paid for that. That's where there were bards traveling around, and they were paid by kings to stay at court so that they could have music whenever they wanted. That was the first Spotify subscription. And now we're basically going to go back to that, I think, because you can listen to music anytime you want. You can have it generated by an AI. And I do that a lot, by the way, right? If it's just background music, if I'm working and I just want to get into the flow and I don't want something that's too obtrusive, I want something that really makes me feel good, gets me in the flow, I use AI generated music. But if I want to go to a concert, I'm not going to go to an AI concert. Right? Just never going to do that. If I'm at a party with friends...
never say never. If there's one thing we've learned, never say never.
Yeah, of course.
Continue with a point.
Yeah, with Poe. Yeah, but I think when we have parties in the future, you'll still want like a Patrick Willer. What was your DJ name when you were younger?
Patrick Willer was my DJ name. Yeah,
Patrick Willer. Okay, so you still want a Patrick Willer to come and play at your party, right? Because you want somebody there to interact with, to feel special, that is something unique that other people will not have. He created a live set right there. Nobody else will ever hear it. And you still want, things that are pop culture of the moment, right? There's always going to be some kind of, maybe that could be an AI artist, I guess, if there's an AI artist bringing out a hit song that everybody's listening to.
What a DJ is very good at is seeing the crowd and having experience and a sense of what the crowd needs at what moment. I can envision something with all smartwatches and etc. measuring heartbeats and emotions that goes automatically, that some kind of AI could over time feed that perfectly as well. Now we need a drop. Now we need something cinematic, now, including there are some ways to really get to an AI kind of DJ.
Yeah, well, this is a very good one. Of course, ultimately we can do that, but I do believe that there will be a place for even kind of pop culture, right? It's nice that you have an AI generating music for you, but if nobody ever heard that song, you cannot jump in the air to it with your friends because it comes on like it used to be on the radio, right? So you still want that shared experience, that human shared emotion of having a shared interest or something you like, and you cannot achieve that with AI stream music. So there's definitely use cases for it. But ultimately, I think that there will still be a place for uniquely crafted music, even if it's technically less good, doesn't matter. That will tie into human emotion, and therefore human-created art and human-created scarcity in that sense will always have a place.
Yeah, and that is also what the numbers that Suno is reporting kind of underlines, because this is not just a small tool that people sometimes make a song with. This now is a entertainment subscription, like your Netflix subscription, where you kind of create your songs, remix your songs, make your songs. And people ask me, do people really listen to that stuff? Well, obviously they do have complete playlists created by Suno that they just have as background music, or they use it like a radio. And that's a completely new category. And we're very well done from Suno for creating that, because we just talked about OpenAI. They were not able to do that with a similar kind of entertainment tool with AI video. Nope. which has a
Yep.
little bit of audio in it, not musically, but I saw some videos where drums were pretty accurate. Suno did
Yep.
pull it off to get a consumer product
Yep.
in AI. So
Yeah.
kudos to them.
In fact, I've already caught myself because I listen to Spotify a lot, and I have it always turned to the setting where it automatically adds new songs to my playlist that in line with what I listened to before. And I've already found several times that I was listening to a song I really liked, and then I went to look for it. And I was like, I just had this inkling of a feeling, right? Because, especially people like you and me that are really into this, we're still kind of sensitive. We can tell sometimes when it's AI, right? There's still like sometimes this uncanny valley, but it's very tiny. So I'd be like, man, this sounds like an AI generated song, man. And I go and check, and the artist is literally like 2 months old. The artist doesn't exist anywhere else, only on Spotify. So all the telltales are there. This is just some person who generated a song on Suno and just is publishing those on Spotify to make a few quick bucks. And
how difficult is it for Spotify to filter all that out? They have removed 70 million tracks in just 2025. Just imagine what kind of engine they need to kind of cut the crap from reasonable good music. And what will the strategy be? At one point in time, they might be overflown with AI music. Or maybe they label themselves only human created or a mix. I don't know where it goes.
This is exactly the point. And this is why I think that ultimately things like copyright won't hold up. It's not a matter of whether we want it or whether it's good for the economy. It's a matter of the sheer pressure created by the absolutely massive, overwhelming tsunami of content created. How is Spotify ever going to be able to keep up with it? They'd have to spend more money on filtering their songs than they spend on anything else to make sure that the music on there is specifically only human made. They're just not going to be able to keep up with that because the Suno keeps getting better and better. There's going to be a point very near in the future where you won't be able to make it out. You just simply won't be able to recognize it anymore. So how are you going to filter it?
And what is also going to happen, it's also going to do this autonomously. So this weekend, one of our friends shared a radio station completely created with Claude code that is generating music. So there will be radio stations with Suno tracks that just go 24/7 with new music. So it will all be automated like that. So that there's no stopping to this exponential.
100%. And honestly, I don't care because there are songs that I really lose my mind to that are so good from Suno already. So
this leads me to another article that I saw on X that in the ARC report it was mentioned that AI is currently creating more written content than humans created. So we have passed that point. But this is interesting, right? So for written text, we've passed this point. For music, it can be that far away in this speed. It has to kind of happen this year. For writing code, it is to be predicted in 2029. There will be more code written by AI than by any human before. And I think 2029 is too far in the future. There will be earlier. So that's basically how AI will create way more content than any human has ever done in history, right? And you also have a bit about that in your presentation, I know.
Yeah, I'm sharing the charts. For those of you listening, we're looking at 2 charts here. One is the annual written output in words between 1500 and 2030 by humans. And so the black line is basically a more or less straight, slightly accelerating line curve. And it's in trillions of words. It's a logarithmic scale on the left. So this is exponential growth in words written. And you see a black line. And when I first looked at this graph, and when you see it, you'll see the same thing. I was like, wait, there's only one line on this chart. It took me 5 minutes to realize that the line on the right, which is literally a vertical line in purple, that is actually AI written words. It's not the end of the chart. It's actually the literal, this is a logarithmic scale, and AI written words just goes up in a straight line to the top like a rocket taking off. And it's just absolutely bonkers. And then the next one is cumulative written output. So that's the total amount of words written by humans as it is growing logarithmically. And you see this is a S-curve on a logarithmic scale. And again, it took me 5 minutes to realize that AI is again up there. A straight up vertical line straight to the top at the end of the chart. And I think that this is so representative of AI and how it is a supersonic tsunami, because this is just one aspect of it, but it's going to be like this in every field of science. We're going to have science mass solved in the next 10 years. We're going to have disease mass solved in the next 10 years. And on every single metric that you can possibly imagine, if you put it on a time scale like this against human history, and you take, even if you take just 50 years, but anything 50 years or more, and you put AI on that chart, you'll see that it's just going to be a line straight up vertically, exponentially flying off.
Which kind of means that if you're an individual contributor or a writer, as we both, by the way, are, it becomes more of a search to original ideas, having the right taste, having a new sense of what your audience wants. And for businesses, getting this differentiation going, right? Because with all this writing, and this is of course general complaint, all the LinkedIn posts are starting to look the same, all the Twitter posts are starting to look the same, all marketing campaigns are starting to look the same, except the ones where a human has a delicate balance with all these tools and just lifts something else, like the new Lego campaign that's now being released. Great use of AI. So yeah, just use your tools more creatively. That's the whole.
I think it's interesting to see you and me both working very hard to create all these guardrails around the AI that we use, in our case, for example, Claude, to make it sound like us, to make it think like us, to make it recognize what we think is important, so that we start to collaborate with this AI to write articles. But when we let it do some of the work for us, it's still in line with our voice profile and our way of thinking and reasoning, etc. We know both that it's kind of hard because these models have a tendency to go back to their shape. And I think that what that really comes down to is that in the future, maybe 3-5 years from now, it will be just like I installed the Gemma models here and I start using them locally. What's going to happen is that with this movement, where the models become smaller, et cetera, at some point we'll be able to train our own models. Just like I'm already using Comfy UI to train my own video models locally. So in 5 years, you and me will both have an AI that we trained ourselves, or maybe we distilled from a bigger model or some way, that will be trained based on our data, who we are, everything it knows about us. And that model will far more accurately kind of represent us, be a digital twin of us, allowing us to create real content in collaboration with something or someone that is a million times faster in its capability of production, but that is actually, a one-to-one copy of who we are. And I think that's where we're heading.
I would like to propose to go to the final topic, if it's okay with you, Aragorn. That is about a post created by Jack Dorsey. And this is interesting because 2 episodes ago, we talked about the fact that he laid off 4,000 people from blogs. And now he follows up with an essay that he posts on X, which is worth a read. Absolutely. We will link it in the show notes and in the news brief, which is called From Hierarchy to Intelligence. And he basically makes a plea of getting rid of the org chart, the pyramid, hierarchical org chart in an organization, and move to something else. And this is very close to my heart and to yours as well, Aragorn, because we found that innovation network for a reason. And for every company that I've worked for or built teams within companies, it was also built on that same principle. You build a network because information flows faster within a network. Nodes find their way. You have some critical nodes that connect everything. If you have this traditional org chart and somebody at the bottom has a problem with somebody somewhere else at the bottom, they have to go all the way up in the org chart to go all the way down on the other end, which is way too time consuming and will not be functional in this time and age. Very good blog. And also he's rewiring his organization to basically become a organization with 6,000 people, because that's what's left with blog, to move like a startup. Any thoughts from your side on this piece of writing?
I mean, one, I love the article because he takes the approach that I, of course, made my signature attribute, and that he
from history.
He takes the historical
yeah, exactly.
approach.
Yeah, he did it very well.
He looks at it. Exactly. That's why I instantly fell in love with this article, because it is just so well anchored in these, historical things that we've seen, these analogies, or maybe I should say precedents. And I think they're very strong in support of his case, building his case. Secondly, I think this is just a perfect example of, again, tying back to what we discussed earlier, right? We were discussing about how now we are empowered with AI agents where an individual can have basically 100 employees that in the digital space are already basically replacing humans in so many ways, and that can build their own new tools, build their own new workshops, build their own new spaces, build everything themselves, and then go out and go forth and prosper basically for you. And obviously in the future, 10 years from now, we'll have the same thing being reality in the world through robots. And that poses us with some serious questions on how do we go forward? How is business done going forward? And one of the things is that you pointed out quite clearly before, the big companies now run into this issue that because of their size, they're having trouble pivoting and changing. There's so many things to take into account, so many moving parts. And with humans, these moving parts are quite hard to manage. With agents, it's significantly easier to do that. And so there's multiple ways to deal with that. You can go the Google route, where you basically create a sandbox inside your own organization, like they did with Google DeepMind, where you basically have an organization within an organization that has access to the resources of the bigger organization, but in and of itself, it's basically like a disconnected, so it can rotate and move quicker and pivot quicker and work like that. The other way, of course, is what Jack Dorsey is doing here, where he basically says, well, in this day and age, we cannot be too large. We should be more nimble. We should be more flexible. And the way to do that is to get rid of as many people as possible. Sounds nasty, but and replace whatever we can with AI, because that will make us far more capable, flexible, and able to adapt to changing situations and move faster. And I think this is what needs to happen for everybody, for every company, if it wants to survive.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And he kind of eloquently underlines the fact that it's not about lowering cost. These firing people is not lowering cost. It's about faster learning, faster building, faster delivery, better customer satisfaction. And what's also fascinating, he is thinking this through, they're experimenting with it, so it's not final, but he lands on 3 job categories, basically. The only 3 job categories that he wants is a builder, an owner, and a coach. People who build, people who take responsibility, and people who kind of have experience and coach. That triangle is where he kind of focus on. So I'm really curious on where this is heading. But also, I think this story that he just writes out, part of it is playbook for what we already have with exponential executives, right? We talked about it in the last episode together with Jelmer. We have a new proposal that we have as an offering from Innovation Network. One is on executive level, a full day mastery of vibe coding and understanding this exponential shift, and then also feeling it, experimenting with it yourself, having your fingers on the button. And we have an addition for managers. And this is a big part of it, moving from a hierarchy to an intelligence, using your agents as an intelligent layer, and what is the culture change within the organization. So if that's something that interests you, do sign up for more info on one of these proposals.
Yeah, you've said it. I think that, yes, our middle management kind of version is called Vibe Code Masterclass. That is necessary, but it's also misleading. And I've pointed this out before. The term vibe coding gives the impression that this is something that's relevant if you're a software developer or if you want to learn how to code. And it couldn't be further from the truth. This also ties back to what we discussed about Anthropic and the models and where they're shifting. The truth is that what we found is that a lot of these models, they're just really good because they natively understand language and natively understand coding. And because coding is the language of the modern world and our civilization, to fully master the digital world, and therefore to fully master the future of any company, any industry, which is agentic AI, you need to understand how to work with them. You don't need to understand the language because they do, and they can act as translators, but you need to understand how to work with them. And that's what the Masterclass and Exponential Executives is about, because we wanted to not just talk about it in our podcast and in our keynotes, but we wanted to help companies and leaders on any level and professionals on any level to be able to kind of make that transition and understand what they can do. So that's absolutely it.
So thanks, Aragorn. It was again a very interesting conversation.
This was a good one, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's always cool. And thank you, listener, as well for tuning in to us. We will keep track on what is coming, what it means, what to do. Don't forget to subscribe, but also this time maybe you should take a visit to vibecodemasterclass.nl. So one word, check it out. Let us know what you think and if we can help you in any way. Other than that, like they say in the Netherlands. See you later.
Hello, everybody. It's Aragorn here. And if you made it to the end of this episode, which clearly you have, then we want you to know that Patrick and me really consider you a Singularity server. You're part of our community. Now, if you haven't already, that probably means you want to sign up for our weekly newsletter and our bi-weekly podcast on innovationnetwork.substack.com. That's innovationnetwork.substack.com. Now, of course, we're also on your favorite platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or Amazon. YouTube, doesn't matter. You can find us there. Another thing I'd really love is if you would leave us your thoughts on everything that we discuss in our newsletter and every episode. And of course, if there are things that you think we really should discuss in future episodes, make sure to leave that in the comments as well. We'll check all of them ourselves, and there's nothing that we love more than to engage with our community, the people in it, and their ideas. We really hope that you enjoyed this and previous episodes, and we really, really look forward to seeing you in the next one. That's it for now, and of course, like they say in the Netherlands, see you later.